Here's a quiz for you. When is a crescendo not a crescendo? Music is a hard thing to notate in a way that musicians will always understand. One example I found lately as I'm reading through marches, which I find to be very good practice for many things, are dynamic marks that really aren't for dynamics. They're really for phrasing. An example here in the Liberty Bell March by John Philip Sousa. The trio is piano, as many marches are, and yet there are crescendos in there. In this case, most of those are really two-bar phrasing that leads to the third bar, and then you are supposed to know to come back down to piano, otherwise the trio would be constantly expanding. Here's what it sounds like when you play it. In this particular snippet, it's a little bit hard to know what he wants because there's a crescendo that means phrasing mark, as I explained. There's also a crescendo decrescendo. In that case, he wants that to sound like a dynamic change more than a phrasing. So it's a little bit confusing for the player, but as you play enough of these, you'll get the idea that he can't possibly mean to just keep crescendoing throughout this piano trio. Another example of this kind of writing is from Kenneth J. Alford in the march, The Mad Major. In the trio of this march, it is a piano as well, and there's a two-bar crescendo as well, which is just a phrasing. But then I think the context of the music clearly indicates that he wants to come back down to a piano as we start that phrase over again, and yet the piano is not marked. We're supposed to know. In the Mad Major, we had something else to look at. The trio there has some triplet quarter notes. In the next measure after those first appear, there are eighth note to dotted quarter rhythms. Now, I would assume, and I think most band directors assume, that Alford really wanted a contrast there. A triplet rhythm clearly in the quarter note triplets, of course. But then in the eighth note to dotted quarters, he does not want those to sound triplety, but more square, duple rhythms. So, da 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 da, da 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 da. So a difference there. Some band directors might choose to have you play the dotted quarter to eighth note rhythm more as a triplet, and if they ask, I'd be ready to do that. That's what your job is. The Alford March has another puzzle as well. It starts piano, then it does have a two-bar crescendo, which seems to be a phrase mark. That could be a real crescendo. And there could be an implied crescendo, actually, to lead up to the forte and fortissimo that come a little bit later. And that also works in that phrase. You could do it either way. You could come back down to the piano, or you can have a crescendo to lead up to that loud dynamic. It builds a little tension there, which is good. So again, watch your band director, be ready to do what you're told, and it should all work out fine.